welcome into the Inquirer podcast. Happy Monday morning. Still Monday morning. We're recording this about 11:15. Shout out to all the live YouTube listeners. As we have to do an emergency podcast, it's Jeremy Werner, Derek Piper, because Illinois has a new addition to the basketball roster. Only 3 scholarships now available. And this is a big one, both literally and we think quality-wise here, Derek Piper. And Illinois going overseas across the Atlantic. We knew Brad Underwood and his staff were overseas here recently, and they come back and they get Tomislav Ivišić, from Croatia, 7'1", 250 pounds. Has played over professionally the last couple years. So technically he's a freshman. People asking me about his years of eligibility, Derek. There's multiple years. It's just how long does it take him to go make money, whether it's back in Europe or it's back in the NBA. And some people think he can be an NBA prospect. So, Derek, we've been doing our research on him, been diving into him, the brother of a Kentucky center who Orlando Antigua coached last year, obviously played a big part in this recruitment, but just your quick reaction to Illinois adding Tomislav Ivišić.
We knew Orlando Antigua wasn't going to take too long to make his first splash, his first imprint on this roster, and here you have it with Ivišić, and a skilled stretch big, legit 7', 250, ability to shoot the three. I think he's got good touch around the basket, good passer as well. The more and more I see of him, the more I like his feel for the game, whether he's passing to a cutter out of the post, can do some short roll stuff off the ball screen. And that's one thing. I think he's got a lot of diversity in the way that you can use him. You can play him in pick and pops. You can play him in a short roll situation if they blitz the ball handler, and you kind of give him in that free throw line extended range where he's got ability to maybe take a step or two in and use that floater or just a left hand that he is a lefty, good with the touch around the basket there. And also just a very efficient jump shooter. You look at his analytics, and yes, they do have synergy numbers even overseas, and his catch and shoot rate, his just overall jump shot percentages were really good. I mean, I know it was not a crazy volume from 3, but if you look at the pro league in Montenegro, taking about 2 threes a game at about a 41% clip, and playing in the ABA league as well, where you've got some pros. I mean, he's in a game with Frank Kaminsky on the other side. Like Brandon Paul's playing in there. You've got a number of Shabazz Napier. So there are a lot of familiar faces and just talented guys, but also just some grown men that he's gone against. So I like that coming in to the 5 spot and knowing that you have Merez, who's obviously very talented and brings a different skill set. I mean, he's very athletic and good rebounder, rim runner. Ivišić isn't as mobile and not a plus athlete, I don't think. I don't think he's a bad athlete. He's just not super explosive. And in comparison to his brother, Big Z is more explosive and more of the flash plays, the bigger shot blocking presence. I think that Tomislav can do some of that around the rim because of his size and his length. But I think his offensive skill is definitely something that Brad and the staff, they loved having a stretch 5 in Coleman Hawkins. I think they love the idea of having that ability again with Tomislav to stretch the floor, provide the floor spacing, have a number of guys, if not all 5 guys on your roster on the court that can pass, that can handle a little bit, that can shoot it, and he certainly checks that box.
Yeah, I'm really interested to figure out, what does he go by? What does Brad call him in the press release whenever they announce this? Is it Tommy? Is it Tomislav? Is it Big T? Like, what? I'm interested to see what the nickname is, Derek, but this is a different piece that Illinois obviously needed on this roster. But I also like, Derek, that there's not a lot of overlap. Like he doesn't play the same way as somebody else. This is a legit 7-footer who, as you can see on the film here, can post up. He's an effective post-up player, but then he also can stretch you out. So you can play him with Ty Rodgers. And what I love about this for Ty is that a 5-man can't guard Ty when Ivišić is on the court, right? So like you could have Ty with 4 shooters around him with Ivišić on the court. You can run offense through this guy. And while defensively, I don't think he's, as you said, the best athlete, but I don't think he's a stiff either. So you're probably running drop coverage with him, right? But he can make an impact in one-on-one post situations. I think he can guard people there. He's not going to get bowled over like Coleman just because Coleman was smaller. This guy's a legit 7 foot He's listed at 250 pounds, according to Jonathan Gavoni. That'll hold up, right, against some of these Big Ten post players. But the addition of him, like, to me, he looks like a longer rink mass, Derek. The way you can run offense through him, the way he can impact the glass, and just his skill set. So he's still got to prove it at this level. But as you said, like, I turned on the film of them playing USC last year, and when USC went overseas, and I see a guy he's playing with that has my hairline, right? That looks like he's my age. So I don't know how good that guy is, but just tell you, he's been playing against men, and as you said, he's playing against real talent in that ABA league, which is one of the better leagues over in Europe. So I know this isn't going to get the attention of some of the additions so far, but this is as big of an addition as I think they've had. And I love Ben Humrickhouse. I love Kylan Boswell. It's just hard to find big men with this skill set and this kind of fluidity. Like, he's a fluid athlete at the very worst. And he's obviously very skilled. So it's hard to find those over in the States. So to go abroad and do that, we can talk about that here in a second. But I just think this is as big of an addition, given the position he plays, given what he does to allow everyone else to play a different way, and to play in the Big Ten with all these Big Ten big men. I think this is a huge addition.
Yeah, no, I firmly agree with that. It is, of course, thinking outside the box at the very least, as far as your options there. And of course, Illinois in general has been more and more interested and involved in recent years in the international ranks, and being able to have Orlando Antigua with a lot of connections. Of course, he's got the relationship with the family, and certainly the relationship he was able to build with Big Z and to get him to Kentucky, and now to be able to go back into that same pool and get his twin brother. I think it's a big deal. And yeah, as you see here, there's just a lot of versatility and just diversity to what he can do. He can post up like you see there. He's got good touch. I'm not saying, he's not a bad athlete at all. Just not super maybe quick twitch or
right.
Laterally crazy. I mean, but we're talking about a 7-footer, so usually don't see a ton of that anyway. But I mean, sometimes with kind of his spot up set shot, it gives me a little bit of Hunter Dickinson vibes a little bit.
Sure.
I know that he's not as thick as Hunter is, and certainly Hunter's a high ceiling in terms of just overall impact. I'm not saying he's going to be that, but yeah, the ability to post him, the ability to just have him stretch the floor, and it's a smooth jump shot, one that he shoots really well at the free throw line too. And I think that, defensively, there will be some matchups in the Big Ten. I mean, if you're guarding Omar Ballo, if you're guarding some of the more physical posts out there, that he could get bullied a little bit, but I like the fact that he's got he's got a strength base to him. He'll turn 21 in August. You got time to get him with Fletch. You're not working with a guy that's a stick out there as far as his physicality standpoint. And the fact that he has gone against grown men, I think that will allow him to just have that base of knowing how to compete with those guys. I've seen him; he just battles really well around the basket. Can rebound with his long arms, and in the Montenegro League, I mean, he puts up, I think, 12 points and 7.5 rebounds a game. That's pretty productive. That's a top tier league in Montenegro. So, I like just the versatility, the skill set, all that you can do with him offensively. I think that opens up the floor. Yes, for a guy like Ty Rodgers, I think allowing Kylan Boswell a free lane to drive as kind of that initiator, facilitator. We'll see who else. Illinois, I know that's what everybody's going to want to do here in a second is, all right, this is nice. Who we get next?
Who's next?
Can you get a ball handler, big guard, stud wing? That still remains to be seen, but someone that can go downhill and initiate. So his pick and pop, his just comfortability operating around the perimeter. But yes, also if you especially like a matchup that you get or a switch that you get, he can post up and get to that left hand, especially soft touch out of that.
So in the ABA league, which is the superior league, he averaged 7.3 points, 4 rebounds, a block, an assist, shot 64% from 2, made 13 of 32 from 3, 41%. That'll play. A really good free throw shooter too. He's an 80+% free throw shooter, 85+% during the last year in that Serbian league, as you said, 12 points, 8 rebounds, a block, an assist, 60% from 2, 13 of 28 from 3. 87% from free throw. Now, those are smaller sample sizes. These are 14 games, but you add all that together, Derek, and that's overseas last year, 10 points, shooting 40+% from three, shooting 85+% from the free throw line, and obviously showing some skill in the post. And last summer against USC in that, game overseas that USC went overseas to play, I had him for 23 points and 12 rebounds is what I was told. So that was a loaded USC team talent-wise. They have a couple first-round draft picks on that team. So, I mean, he held up against that team. Doesn't mean he's going to score 20 and 12 against Illinois, but he has proven against some of these other teams. So if there is a transit, what do you think the biggest transition for him will be outside of the cultural dynamic of this? His brother certainly went through that last year, was a role player for Kentucky. But if there's, we're excited about this one, but if there's concerns about his transition, what do you think those would be?
I do like that he answers maybe some of the natural ones. Is all right, how's he handle the physicality of the Big Ten? Surely I'm not saying there's not another level maybe to get to or just on a night-to-night basis, but he's played against, again, older guys that have played pro ball, that have played high levels of college, if not dabbled in the NBA. So, but yeah, again, like if you're going to face Ballo, if you're going to face Vlad Golden one-on-one in the post at Michigan and those type of things, Maryland will have a really good front court with Derek Queen and Julian Reese. So defensively, I think offensively, the fit's probably going to be fairly natural, or just because Brad likes to run kind of that pro style offense, the spacing, the be able to just the variety of pick and pop stuff, the post ups if he can get them. I don't think he's going to be a high usage post up guy, but obviously he can do that. But yeah, I think just defensively and competing on the glass against the athleticism and the physicality that you see night to night in the Big Ten is something that I would certainly think of. And how much strength can Fletch continue to add to him? 250 is not bad. I know 7 foot 250, spread it out. He's not a brick wall by any means. He's still kind of a little wiry, but he's got some foundation there. So I think it's just adding more strength, being able to be physical around the basket. And then continuing to – he's played a lot of drop coverage. I think just continuing to rep that and know how to be in the right positioning, how to come over as a shot blocker. That's one thing I do really like is that maybe he's not stuffing centers all the time, but he can come over as not a bad athlete with length to come over on that ball handle that takes you to the rim and be able to contest or be able to swat that thing away.
Yeah, I'm thinking of it this way, Derek. Like Coleman Hawkins was your 5 last year, and he's not going to have the playmaking ability that Coleman had. Coleman shot at a really high level last year, but he kind of create for himself, and there's just a basketball IQ there that was really, really high. And Coleman's switchability, even though Illinois didn't use it last year, they played him in drop coverage, was a valuable thing there. But what Ivišić has is just that pure size, right? Like he's 30 pounds more, 20 pounds more than Coleman Hawkins was, about 4 inches taller than Coleman Hawkins was. So it's interesting. I think this is probably where Brad would like to go with big men here in the future. But speaking of that, like the front court they have put together this offseason, I am really excited about. Like just to see how they play these guys together, the ability to be versatile, the ability to go matchups. Because you have Ben Humrickhouse, 7'9", big-bodied playmaker, right? Can probably play the 3 at times, but really a great stretch 4. You got Merez Johnson, this tenacious, ferocious rim runner, limited, skill-wise, a little bit offensively, but athletically, explosiveness, strong, and just a tenacious guy. Then you had this skilled 5-man who's really big in Ivišić. And then you had Kerry Booth, 6'10", explosive, but kind of a string bean right now at 200 pounds, but can really shoot it potentially and has an untapped ceiling. And then Trey White, kind of this versatile forward, is a little smaller, but can post you up and booty ball. Like there's so many options there. This was a heck of a retooling talent-wise for the Illini in the front court, and how they're going to be able to play these guys, how big they're going to be able to go is going to be interesting. We'll talk about the backcourt here in a minute, but that's a lot of fun pieces for Brad Underwood and his staff to play with there, especially offensively.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you said it there. I mean, you had to address losing a decent amount of talent, a lot of talent, Coleman and Quincy and Dane Danger, So to go out there and be able to, obviously you had Merez, a longtime commit. Everybody's been highly anticipating his arrival and excited to see what he can provide. He is kind of different from those other three, and I liked his complement, what he provides in addition to maybe some more of that skill, that shooting. I think the other group gives you, because Merez is that physical dog, that athletic rim runner, a guy that I think obviously as he just continues to mature physically and then just get to know what it's like to play in college, try to stay out of foul trouble, those type of things, but the high energy nature of that. And then for Ivišić to be able to step out and shoot it, to be able to be skilled as a passer, run some offense through him, like you were saying, that really opens up cutting off the ball and maybe putting Hamrikhouse in some off-ball screens, those type of things. And of course, just to have that gravity that Hamrikhouse is going to create and that Ivišić could create. And Kerry Booth, I know he didn't shoot it at a high percentage last year as a young freshman at Notre Dame, but I mean, he's expected to be, that was thought to be probably his biggest asset coming out of high school, is just his ability to shoot it at that size. So I think that I'd be surprised if he doesn't take a big leap forward in his efficiency from three as a 6'10" natural stretch four that can step out and shoot. And then, straight line driver that has shown some vertical explosiveness. And I think that as he continues to develop his body, we'll see more of that too. So, there's a good amount of talent in that group, obviously. And then outside of Merez, who we know what his strengths are, you got a lot of skill, a lot of shot making from the perimeter, and it provides Kylan Boswell with a lot there to work in ball screens with, to have spacing. The guys, if you want to just flat out play 5 out, same thing with Ty Rodgers. And again, we'll see who else is added to that backcourt wing mix that can have a good amount of success with that front court.
Yeah, and Jake Davis can be thrown in that front court. Ty, I think, is more kind of guard in this team. We'll talk about that here in a second, but Jake Davis can stretch the floor. How would you kind of rank these guys with who you'd project minutes for? Let's go through it. Hamrikhouse, number one among all these front court guys. Yeah, veteran leadership, the points, the shooting. Would Ivišić be number two?
Probably. I think so. I think he's just your starting 5-man as of right now. Of course, that's one thing everybody's trying to make starting lineups, and I've even offered my opinions as of now at different points. But you bring these guys in, you let them compete. But I certainly at 20, turning 21, the experience that he has, I think that you'd probably look at Ivišić in that 20 to 25 minute range. I think Merez could still play upwards of 20 minutes. We'll see how that goes. But I think that Hamrikhouse for sure. I mean, he's thought to be like a pillar piece for this team. Obviously, Boswell's another one of those. Trey White's probably not getting enough attention or notoriety for maybe where he slots in, especially since you didn't get AJ Storr and a certain guy from Memphis didn't hit the portal. But I think Hamrikhouse 1, and then I'd put Ivišić number 2 right now too. Yep.
Yeah. So that would Trey White be 3, Merez 4, Kerry Booth 5? Like that one's. I mean, this is where it gets interesting. This is last year's team had some depth to it, but I mean, there were 3 players getting 30 minutes a game, right? So this one feels like Brad can rotate a little bit more. This does feel like, at least on paper right now, theoretically, you start going through this front court rotation, and like I can actually see multiple guys getting 15, 20 minutes per game compared to Dane coming in and playing 5-10 minutes.
Right. Yeah. I know that fans are going to want to make sure that Merez is not in a Dane situation, a Monty situation, which I don't think he will be. You want him to get a good share of minutes because I think he's going to be ready to help you. And then also you want to obviously keep him happy for kind of the longer term picture. I think Ivišić is another one of those guys. I do think an impressive year, if he has it in college, could get a nice pro deal overseas. Or I think, based on what I've heard, and I'd have to dig into this a little bit more. I mean, he's at least known on the NBA radar. He's at least known by some scouts out there. So would he be a 1 year and out? Maybe. But I know, and I'm not trying to, maybe pivot past the fact that Brad Underwood and this staff are building this roster to win this year, obviously. But he's another one of those guys that maybe you'd have a year from now, and it'd really be about part of the motive or just a secondary one is having this group maybe stay together multiple years. I like that part of it. But yes, you can go in a number of different directions maybe you don't have a ton of, as of right now, a ton of options in the backcourt. So how does that ultimately work? As of right now, I think that Trey White would probably, I think he'd be in competition if we're throwing him into this mix too, based on what I think he'd probably play at the 3 right now, maybe some 4 too. He'd be a very big challenger probably as the 1 or 2 spot as well.
Yeah. I want to dive into the European part of this, and then we can dive into the backcourt stuff as well. We've seen Brad Underwood recruit overseas, right? Like this is not just hey, they went over this one time and went and got a guy. I mean, Georgie was obviously in New Jersey, but he's from the Republic of Georgia. That probably helps with some connections. Matisse Vasil, I know that didn't get you anything really. Niccolo Moretti, Benjamin Bosman's Verdonk. I mean, we've seen this slow accrual of European kind of influence where they've been trying to make some inroads there. I know Jeff Alexander has worked that, and Orlando Antigua, who we associate mostly with the Caribbean, right? With Alfonso Plummer, Kofi Coburn, Andre Curbelo, guys like that, RJ Melendez. He helps over here, obviously the connection to the Ivišić family, but this has been something they've been working towards, Derek, and we've seen this be successful for other programs. I mean, Gonzaga is the number one, right? Like they went overseas and they became a powerhouse once they went overseas. And then you've had Duke start to get over there a little bit more here recently. It's what great programs have really started to do because this is a worldwide game. I mean, the top 4 candidates for MVP in the NBA are all overseas or not from the United States. I guess Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is in North America from Canada, but this is, you got to go where the talent is. And now it's worldwide. I know Orlando Antigua mentioned it's a global brand, Illinois. Well, it's a global game, and they've been going after this. So what do you make of this? I mean, you've kind of been following this, Derek, the last half decade under Brad Underwood. What do you kind of make of their European endeavors here?
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, there's a lot of talent, obviously internationally, a lot of different places. Arizona, I throw in, is another program that's done it well, for sure. I know your guy, John Beilein, at one time.
Yeah, the same coach there, right? I mean, Tommy Lloyd was the connection for Gonzaga, and then he takes it to Arizona. That's a good point.
For sure. John Beilein with the Wagners going to Germany. So it is something to be said, a long way to come, not to knock him too much, but from Matisse Vasil, who I think was the first international kind of roll the dice, now to get Ivišić is obviously a different level of prospect. I think that there has been a change and a shift. They've really made a concerted effort to get in over there, make the right connections. As of now, in the current era of college basketball, where a lot of guys have agents and that whole kind of thing, really trying to work those inroads to get in with the right guys that have connections to players. And Zachary Perrine was supposed to be a big splash for Illinois, and obviously he may even get his name called in the NBA draft here coming up. At the very least, he's on draft boards as well. So that one didn't work out, but that was a nice addition. Niccolo Moretti was someone that played at the NBA Academy Games, which now that's another thing kind of that's part of the evolution or just change, is that there's more exposure to these guys. They've got the NBA Academy down there as part of kind of the summer circuit for coaches to go out and see. We all know with Peach Jam and Adidas, Under Armour, those type of things. But guys like Brad Underwood, a lot of coaches around the country make sure to stop in Atlanta area to see some of the top talent from Europe and other areas gather and showcase themselves. So there is just more exposure to it. It's easier. It's easy for me to say. You got to make those trips. I know that Jeff Alexander probably isn't complaining too much about the spots he's been sent, Italy and Spain that he's currently working in and whatnot. But yeah, there's a lot of talent. And now I think as the international presence has grown in the NBA, there's probably more of an interest for those guys to come over and get seen in the U.S. and seen more by NBA scouts if they have that dream of making that same kind of path.
It might help to get acclimated to the culture, to the different things over here. I know the American culture and especially the basketball culture, right, is probably ingrained over there, but to get over here probably doesn't hurt their exposure, as you said, but also that aspect of it. Yeah, you mentioned some of the other efforts in Europe. We will talk about one of the targets potentially there because they still need some backcourt help, Derek. We'll talk about that here in a second. But first, I want to talk about one of our great sponsors, and that's Factor. Warmer, sunnier days are calling, and fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, My Favorite Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. And you can make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. Head to factormeals.com/Illini50 and use code Illini50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code Illini50 at factormeals.com/Illini50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off for your next month. All right, Derek, everybody in the comments is asking us who's next, as you said, and they need backcourt help. They need some help on the wing. Some of their thoughts and ideas of what they could get are gone now. So we turn the page, Derek. What could be next after the Illini add Tomislav Ivišić?
I definitely still want to make a big splash. I think that ball handling is certainly something they're looking at as someone that's going to be a big guard or a wing. Of course, the initial goal was to really get a stud addition, someone that maybe is your number one option offensively. I'm not saying that has gone away. I think that ideally you're going to find that type of piece. I think that if you're looking in the portal right now, two names that come to mind, Kadari Richmond is probably the highest of the priority list. A guy that's a first team all league in the Big East from from Seton Hall that St. John's has been linked to a great deal. Although St. John's has been linked to a couple of guys that have gone in the portal and thought to be, that would make the most sense there, and didn't get him. At least Cliff Amori is one that just recently landed at Alabama. So Richmond is a really good athlete, strong, downhill attacker, a high assist guy, just a dog defensively too. I love his game. Really, really enjoyed watching him with Seton Hall last year. One knock on him is the 3-point shooting wasn't really there last year, although the previous year I think he shot at around 40% at a lower volume. So just kind of that downhill presence, knowing the floor spacing that I think Illinois can have. He'd be a huge addition, and he's from Brooklyn. So the New York area has been a sweet spot for Orlando Antigua. I know that Illinois is at least involved there and trying to work it. He recently took a visit to Oklahoma over the weekend. So if that thing is still open, I think Illinois is certainly working it and trying to line a visit up themselves if they can swing it. So tough competition because he's one of the top guys in the portal, if not the number one name out there right now. But he's one, and Wooga Poplar from Miami is another one, more of just a dead-eye shooter, someone that shot 44% last year at 5.5 attempts a game for the Miami Hurricane squad that disappointed last year, but he was part of the Final Four team the year before as well, and started a good amount of games and a good shot maker for them as well. So 6'6", can make shots, and those are two names for sure that have been on the radar that Illinois is at least working as far as we know.
Yeah, Kadari Richmond, 16 points, 7 rebounds as a guard, 5 assists, 2.5 steals. You mentioned Wooga Poplar and great shooter, but both those guys, Derek, are defenders too. Like that's what kind of stands out is we've talking all about this offense. You still do need some guys who can defend, and both these guys are high impact defenders. Kadari Richmond's more of a creator, not the most efficient self-scorer, but he's gonna score. But just big, athletic, like those things Terrence does to get to the rim. Kadari can do some of those things. Obviously, Terrence is a more efficient scorer and probably a better shooter, can create for himself. But this guy was an all defensive team guy in the Big East, right? Played for a pretty good team in Seton Hall. He's a dog, like, and he could really, really help you. And Poplar, man, that'd be a ridiculous array of shooters for this team. So anyone else we should keep on the radar?
I know that someone in the chat mentions Chaz Lanier as another one that's Illinois has been linked to as well. But yeah, I think that Kadari Richmond for sure is at the top of the list. If you're talking overseas, which we can go back in that direction as well, Igor Demin from he's playing for Real Madrid in Spain right now.
This guy's fascinating. Like, let's get into this because Igor Demin is fascinating to me, Derek. 6'8", out of Russia, a primary playmaker. He's only 18 years old. But this is a guy that Jonathan Gavoni at ESPN is projecting as a potential lottery pick, at least a first-round prospect. And if we're talking about guys with high ceilings, we're talking about guys. I mean, Illinois has not had a first-round draft pick, barring Terrence Shannon, since 2012. If we're talking about high-end talents here, this is one of the best potential possibilities still on the board, and he can shoot it. Not the most efficient guy yet, but he's versatile, could play 1, 2, 3, whatever you want. Be a primary playmaker next to Kylan Boswell. I would imagine he's expensive, though, given how valued he probably is over in Madrid, which is a very, well-paying league. And plus, this guy just comes with a huge profile, but he fascinates me, Derek.
He should. Yeah. No, he definitely should at 6'8", listed anywhere 6'8", 6'9", and yeah, natural ball handler, really, really skilled, could shoot it, like you said. I mean, maybe not I wouldn't say he's a knockdown shooter, but 34% from three for the Real Madrid B team. And yeah, I think that as it seems clear that he's probably going to be ready to take the NBA jump next year, whether he's going to play another year in Real Madrid, he could get a nice payday to then become a pro. Right now he's an amateur, and we'll have a decision to make. And that's one thing that Illinois and whoever else, as far as colleges go, if there are others in the mix, I imagine there would be, trying to pry him away. You're going to have to compete with a pro deal for him to stay in Spain or stay overseas there. But yeah, I mean, he's projected by the Gavoni, I think, number 10 overall in the 2025 draft. I mean, a lotto pick talent, and you certainly understand why, because he can play on or off. I keep beating the drum. I think Kylan, as someone that can be a nice spot up shooter, even if it's Kadari Richmond, but yes, also Igor. Not saying that you have to pick and say, okay, you're always off the ball versus you're always initiating for us, but that ability to have two guys that can facilitate offense, that can push it in transition. And yeah, I mean, the talent for Igor, while he would be 18 and maybe it opens up a conversation if you could get, again, I mean, sometimes we have these in recruiting, like, hey, what if we can get both? And which way do we get? A lot of times you don't end up making those choices because you don't have both lined up. But would you rather give, let's just call it like $1 million in NIL to like a Kadari Richmond, who's a proven college player, an older guy, versus an 18-year-old who has lottery pick potential? I might go Kadari, but man, Igor is really good. If you
want the commodity, it's Kadari. If you're feeling a little frisky by Vern, you're like, man, we could have a lottery pick with our name next to him. There's a lot of value in that, and to get that overseas could be highly impactful. Like, Kadari's not going to be that, right? Like, he's not going to be a lottery pick. So it's really intriguing. But again, I don't think that's going to be a decision Illinois has to make. But I just watch his film. He's so fluid. Like, how do you stop him from getting to the rim because of his length, his quickness? Like, the strength part, I think, would be his biggest transition to the Big Ten, especially. But he's a fascinating prospect. By the way, Illinois has announced the signing of Tomislav Ivišić. We are saying there at Ivišić, Tomislav. So tender of financial aid. He signed with Illinois today. Underwood calls him Tomislav. Is the modern day five who fits right into our style of play as a big man who can space the floor. He can play in pick and rolls as an elite passer and can step out in space and shoot threes. He also is a very good rim protector. Tomislav has played a lot of high-level basketball against older, established competition. That experience has made a tremendous impact on his development. We are excited to add someone with his skill and versatility to our program. So, yeah, Underwood saying a lot of things we said earlier about Tomislav Ivišić. Nice addition, Derek. So that it is official from Illinois today.
Yeah, it's a big one. And I don't think it's a coincidence that he first mentions just a stylistic thing that he brings offensively. Is that spacer, is that ability to pick and pop, ability to do different things. And I think a skilled big is Brad's kind of prototypical ideal big man always. I'm not saying that he's not going to love to have a Merez, but I think that's great to have both. Like, it's great to have the ability to go both both ways with it. He's talked before plenty about not having two of the same pieces, being able to do different things. So Mraz with his athleticism and Tomislav with his skill. So again, like I think his passing is great. His feel for the game, his ability to shoot. I mean, the efficiency numbers were fantastic. We talked about the 3-point ball at 40 plus and the free throw rate. And I do think even 2-point field goals plus 60%. So that shows touch around the basket. And I do think it's a big deal to be able to go out and get somebody that's played against older guys and those type of things. And I think one more point to make is Illinois could have went just straight up rim protector because there was interest in getting a like top-notch shot blocker. And Ugana Onyenso was somebody that certainly came to the spotlight because he was a Orlando Antigua recruit. And I know he's declared for the draft in the portal. At one point, it looked like he was trending towards Alabama. I don't know if that's going to be the case now that they just had to pay up for Cliff. But certainly there's a big difference at both ends. I mean, defensively, he's just probably one of the best, if not going to be the best shot blocker in college basketball next year if he comes back. Offensively, he only averaged 4 points a game last year. No real skill to speak of and hasn't been the best finisher on the rim. Now, he's still only 19. I'm not saying that he can't develop, but Tomislav is far more versatile and brings a lot more to the table offensively versus what he defensively not, an elite shot blocker can do it some. I don't think it's necessarily a coincidence. I'm not saying that they could have gotten both or that they had Ugana lined up because they didn't. But I think that Brad, again, wants an offensive factor at the 5 that just does something different, that makes some 5 men uncomfortable. You have to guard them in space and stretch it out. So I don't think it's a coincidence they win that route.
Yeah, Rick asks, $10 super chat. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. What kind of offense are you running with this addition? I'm assuming a 4-out would be one strategy. I think that's the biggest part. And Brad mentions it is, this is the offensive fit they want. Plus, he gives a little bit of defensive value. He's not going to be an all Big Ten defender, but he can hang on that end. But offensively, he just helps Illinois run so many different things. If you have just a rim runner, Derek, you are so limited in what you can do. You can do pick and rolls. You can have him dive to the rim, but it's just easier to guard. Like Illinois, with the roster they're putting together, is hard to guard, again, with all the skill they have.
They will be. Yeah, 4 and 5 out stuff for sure. I think you can put the ball in Ivišić's hands on the perimeter and use him as a dribble handoff guy, as someone that can pick and roll, pick and pop, short roll, just the variety there of kind of reading the coverage or being able to vary up how guys have to guard him. And certainly if you want to have him pop out and post somebody up, Trey White's a really good mid-post guy. You can kind of get that mid-post ISO. Humrickhouse, especially against a smaller defender, if he's 6'9", 220, and he's got somebody smaller off a switch or something like that, he can ISO that. Might even see Kylan Boswell dive into a little Jalen Brunson-esque booty ball potentially as well. I mean, he's very strong, especially that lower body. That's something that maybe he can do as well. And just to be able to space it out and not have a shot blocker lingering around the basket. Ty Rodgers, too. I keep maybe forgetting him.
I wrote about him today, Derek. I love how this roster is shaping up for him. Like he might play 10 minutes some games, but like we saw when Terrence Shannon Jr. was out, how he can be an offensive initiator, right? Like not the true point guard in a sense, but he can do some of those things, but he can booty ball. He can put pressure on the rim, create for others. We know he's a good passer. They need some defenders. I think he's still got another level. And if he can actually guard wings now with, Kylan Boswell and Dre Gibbs-Walhorn hounding point guards now, I just like how this roster is setting up for him. And I love that he's still here. I love that somebody from part of the winning the last couple of years is still here. And I just think this roster around him can help. Now, Trey White is a more skilled offensive player, right? So he's still got to battle guys like that. Jake Davis, who can shoot, Ben Humrickhouse. There's still guys he has to battle, but I'm looking at him in the backcourt right now before they can get anybody else. If we'll see if they can get Demham, we'll see if they get Kadari Richmond or somebody of that nature, or if they have to just get a solid guard instead. But there is playing time for Ty Rodgers, and I think a significant role. And I think he's set up to succeed with the roster kind of around him.
Yeah, really. I mean, if he takes a step forward and for as much as we've seen him, I think it's easy to forget he's only going to be a junior. Now stepping into being an upperclassman. So certainly confidence has to be added to his offensive game, especially we saw late season some of that and in the UConn game, the Morehead State game, where maybe just wasn't the most confident offensive player, and has to be able to finish at the rim at a little bit higher rate. But I'm sure that Ty works at it, man. I mean, that's the guy that's going to be in the gym. They'll be with him, continuing to work on his game. And I know that it's easy to talk about his jump shot. I do think they want to continue to try to address it, try to make it be something 12 to 15 feet out. Can he take one here and there?
For me, Derek, can he watch Boo Buie and those 10-foot runners? Like 10 to 8-foot runners. Like those. Listen, I understand the 15-foot jumper, and if he can do it, great. That'd be fantastic. But for me, it's that kind of runner, that mid kind of paint game that he tried a little bit this year, but he also just needs to finish better around the rim. He's still around 60%. That needs to be closer to 65. But the fact that he was making more free throws late in the season, the confidence waned, and that hurt him. But like if he can be a 60% plus free throw shooter and 65% plus guy at the rim, then I think we're talking about a really effective player, even offensively.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, certainly getting in that paint area. The idea that he can get fouled and shot a decent percentage last year, and just trying to come into his own a little bit more and take that next step. And yes, this roster is certainly built to give him opportunities where he's not necessarily we already have a non-shooter out there, or two non-shooters can't really play Ty as well, and that's not the case. They have the shooting to give him the space to operate. I've always thought Ty, and even though he wasn't really your point guard last year because Marcus took over that role and kind of needed him to, Ty has got some more passing playmaking in him, I think, than we've seen yet. Probably just needs to get a little bit more comfortable in it. But yeah, whether it's Ty, whether it's Kylan and some booty ball, or just getting downhill, and then also Hamrikhouse, Trey White, mid-post ISOs, just it should be a team that, once again, is really hard to defend. They can hit you with a number of options, spacing, and if they manage to make a significant splash at that big guard wing, like an Igor, like a Kadari Richmond, or somebody that we're not talking here about yet, that would make them all the more formidable.
Yeah, last point on Ty is I still remember when Terrence was out, like 15 against Michigan State, 15 at Michigan. Like there's offense in his game, and if he gets more confident, and now that Terrence is gone, and before they can get somebody else, we'll see if they do. Like there's a need for somebody that's that big and could put pressure on the rim. Def, Tommy V nickname. We'll see. He said, "Get me Igor Demon. Feels like he'd be the redemption incarnate for our Sean Livingston pursuit a few years ago." I saw somebody else mention, you guys are making it sound like Luka Doncic. Let's hold off. That guy at 18 years old or 17 years old was one of the best scorers in the world. So that's not Demon. Like the Sean Livingston, like lanky playmaking guard. Now I think Demon has shot better than that, but like, yeah, I can see a little bit of that as a big, long playmaking guard. Like that makes a little bit more sense. Let's not go Doncic here. No, that guy would not be coming probably to play college basketball. That guy's just going to wait to be a top 3 draft pick or whatever.
Yeah, he's a little bit more of a prolific scorer for sure. Livingston maybe more quick twitch athletically.
Before the injury,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he was flashy. I'm not saying that Igor's a bad athlete by any means, but yeah, I think that
Denny Avdia, like remember him coming in the draft, like he's in the NBA now, like that kind of player.
Yeah, for sure. Just very smooth. The way he's able to handle it at his size is really, it's great. It's a big asset for him. Can put him in a number of different spots to have size advantages, and certainly, like you said, just how comfortable he is with the ball in his hands to get to the rim and make other guys around him better too, and not at the very least a decent to good shooter, especially from the outside. I mean, 34 from 3 and he's playing also. He's been playing some pro type ball as an 18-year-old. Tomislav has been 20, going to turn 21. For Igor to be 18. And putting up the stats he's doing. I mean, that's why he's a projected lotto pick.
Ridiculous. St. Dom, what's up, Dom? Who is the number 1 team in the Big Ten next season? Definitely not Purdue. We'll see. They got some guys coming back and some good returners. No portal guys, but Michigan State, I have no idea, Derek. who the best team in the Big Ten is right now. I told Isaac Trotter, I texted him and I said, you have to give us a guide of who's good in the Big Ten, who did well. And like, I need a roster sheet. Like he puts out the transfer portal spreadsheet, which is great. I need a roster sheet of all these Big Ten teams because I have no idea who's on what team right now.
It's going to be I think the recency bias is going to make people say Indiana, and it could be Indiana. I mean, we'll see as far as the shooting and the fit with Ballo and Renew. Talent standpoint, decently hard to argue with what they got coming in.
My hot take for Indiana, I would have rather had Humrickhouse on that team than Ballo.
I don't think that's a terrible one. Yeah.
It's just the roster fit. It's a credit to who they have on that team with Mbako, and I think Renew is phenomenal. But I feel like Renew and Ballo together, it's going to cause some issues offensively at times. But I think they've made ridiculous additions. Like they have made as many talent additions in the Big Ten as anybody.
Yeah, Miles Rice, a really good one out of Washington State. Carlisle as well. Lou Goody, good shooter, obviously, can provide something that they definitely and desperately needed. Purdue, it's tough because, and I hope we're not having the same like painter conversations that we had with Izzo. How do you not just go get a center? How do you not use the Zach Edey cell and be like, look at our post touches, look at our development? They're bringing in 6 freshmen.
Believe in our guys, Derek. I mean, it's worked for them, and they got to but you needed an Edey to get there. We'll see. I mean, I kind of trust him a little bit more than Izzo, but he's being stubborn with this. You know, Jones was a nice transfer portal addition, but not any, I believe, this year.
No, they're still oversigned, I think, by 1, even after losing Gillis.
So Bart Torvik's projections currently have UCLA as the top one in the Big Ten. Really? They've had a good portal class. Purdue next, Michigan State, Indiana, USC, Michigan, Rutgers, Northwestern, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Oregon, Maryland, Iowa. Oh, and then Illinois.
No.
I mean, it's hard to – I don't know how much credit Humrickhouse gets. Like, I think we think that's a bigger addition than the Mets probably say. Like he has Kylan Boswell, Ty Rodgers as the top 2 players on this team, which I don't think we believe would be that right now. And Ivišić is not in here, and whoever they add is still not in here. I think the metrics are going to have a hard time with Illinois. But the one thing I do love about Illinois, like we're talking about Indiana, like unbelievable talent they have added. Do all the pieces fit? Like all the pieces Brad Underwood, I mean, theoretically on paper, they fit. It's just, do they fit, you know, as a team together on the court? How do they gel with all this stuff? But when it comes to skill sets, all these guys really, really fit. It's just not as experienced of a team, obviously, as they've had the last several years.
Right. That's a little bit different where you are getting those portal splashes that aren't 5th-year guys outside of Humrickhouse. You got some younger talent coming in. You know, Kerry Booth, his numbers at Notre Dame probably aren't going to move the needle based on him coming in this year for sure. But yeah, I like what they've done so far. I get that they don't have a real proven number one option offensively, and scoring is probably still something that people are looking at and saying, do they have enough of? That's why that next piece at the big guard wing is really, really important. But yeah, I think that they certainly fit. I do think as we get in the conversation, especially as kind of that 2-year window potentially, that this could be really fruitful for Illinois as we look at it progress over that. I don't expect to be covering a Big Ten tournament on a Wednesday based on even though contrary to what Torvik's saying as of now, of course, things aren't finalized.
But Tony, Michigan State returns a lot of guys, but their top guys are Jaden Akins, Xavier Booker's really talented. Jeremy Fears Jr. is really talented. I like Trey Holloman a lot. Frankie Fiddler, I like Illinois' roster more, right? Like,
I'm not on that.
Yeah. I'm with you.
We'll see though. Yeah, I do still think ball handling they're kind of short on right now.
Yeah. I was going to ask you this. The 12th scholarship is really intriguing me because they're going to add a playmaker. Mm-hmm. Can you add anybody? This is why Nicolo Moretti, I kind of like to have him on the roster because at least you got a ball handler in emergency situations, and he's a 12th guy, 11th, 12th guy on scholarship along with Jason Jackstis. It's hard to find those guys nowadays. That's why I don't mind, when you're in the prep recruiting, Derek, you go for the top talent like Jeremiah Fears, who had a heck of a weekend, Morez Johnson, The middle class you probably stay out of and get the transfer portal guys, but I don't mind a developmental guy like Jason Jackson or Nico Moretti, who's got some skill to develop and is probably okay developing for at least a year or two, because it's going to be hard to find 12th and 13th guys on scholarship right now to fill out a roster and to not be problems, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure. Definitely hard to sell that in the portal of, hey, you might play this year or you could play in a pinch. And, Kylan's probably coming in and playing 30 minutes a game, you would assume, or thereabouts. So selling that, and, Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn's still in the mix too. They would have been fine with keeping Nico around. They just weren't making promises as far as, hey, you're going to be in the top 8 of the rotation. I don't think that was something they envisioned. So I don't blame him for wanting to go in the portal and see if he can find a role that he likes somewhere else. But yeah, I do agree that while you certainly have a decent amount to sell, a lot to sell still at that kind of 2 spot, that big guard wing again, beyond, if you add a piece there and then you try to get another ball handler, kind of a backup role, I don't know what you could realistically land on for someone that, in the portal, you're usually talking about, number one, NIL that you got to pay for that. And number two, guys that are waning down their eligibility want to go somewhere where they can play.
Yeah, it probably had to be. And Justin Harmon's the kind of guy I think of that just wants to come home, play in the NCAA tournament. But even he had options, right? Like, and Illinois had a need for a 6th man. Like, that was a 6th man we're talking about. We're talking about potentially the 10th guy in the rotation. But hey, kudos to Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, man. Like, he wasn't guaranteed a huge role, but as the roster's kind of thinned out and Illinois' offseason has gone along, this guy's got the Justin Harmon role. I mean, he stole it at the end of last year, right? About that energy guy. Needs to be more efficient offensively and better decision-making, but I think that'll come with maturity. Like, Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn and Ty Rodgers, I think the 2 guys who have returned, I kind of like the roles that are setting up for this team.
They could be potentially your 2 biggest X factors. Yeah, I mean, DGL is complimentary ball handler, an energy guy. I think a potential plus defender in the backcourt as well. And depending on what else you land in that backcourt, you might need more out of him than maybe you originally anticipated. And yeah, Ty, with the way the roster's constructed, you mentioned it there. Well, some of this is certainly more offensively geared than defensively. Maybe his defensive ability, I know he needs to improve, especially if he's matching up with guards. And I think some of that's just kind of a natural, maybe disadvantage from a quickness standpoint. But can he be someone defensively? Obviously, defensive glass is great, but ability to provide some more of that, where maybe some guys like Humrickhouse are more of just the scorers, the shooters. So that's something where I think both could really move the needle a lot if they make the strides forward that are capable out of them in this offseason.
All right, let's wrap up with Tim. $20 super chat. Appreciate you, Tim. Is it still a possibility that Domask comes back? Also, now that DGL has the freshman monkey off his back, his confidence should be up and showing us that Carson Edwards' potential. Boy, he was good. The perimeter scoring ceiling of this team. Yeah, Carson made a bigger impact, obviously, as a true freshman, when more true freshmen actually made an impact. But I see the athleticism there. Carson was smaller, to be honest with you, but just a natural bucket getter, and DGL better defensively probably, but Carson was just another level offensively. But Domask, no, he's going pro. From everything we've heard, he's moving forward. Obviously, applied for a waiver. We have still not heard that he was denied that waiver, but he had some contact with the NCAA, and I doubt that was all that positive. But adding Ben Humrickhouse tells me that Marcus Domask is not part of the plans for Illinois, Derek.
Yes, fully agree with all of that. And Marcus, I think, is going to have a decent landing spot at the pro ranks. I think he's going to get a chance to be on a summer league team and maybe in a training camp type of situation for an NBA if he shows well enough. At the very least, I think he's got a nice contract waiting for him in Europe. I mean, he had a heck of a year.
I was shocked he wasn't invited to the G League camp, Derek.
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but I was really shocked at that.
Yeah, I know that we both had heard that there was a decent chance that he was going to get the call on that. So unfortunate that he didn't. But we can't blame Bronny James for that one, because Bronny James is taking the spot in the NBA combine. But that's either here nor there. But yeah, I think that, of course, for the NIL money probably is the main driver of what Marcus could have got. I get why he tried just to make a run and see if he could get the waiver. And like you said, whether he got a flat out denial or not, I don't know. I know he's heard something from the NCAA, and then his decision now has been to pivot and fully expected to move forward with his professional pursuits.
I see also talk about Coleman Hawkins in our chat. Listen, I think Coleman wants to go to the NBA. He said that himself. He's entered the transfer portal to give him options, and I love it for him leverage-wise. I think it makes a lot of sense. If Coleman Hawkins came back to college, I personally think, and this is just my opinion, Derek, he'd most likely be playing somewhere else. And probably, because Illinois has filled out his front court here now. Like their front court is basically set for next year. Coleman had a heck of a career. I think he wants to go to the NBA. And if he's told he's going to get drafted, I think he'll definitely stay. If he's told it's more of like a two-way contract situation, the dude, it's simple facts. The dude could go make more in college, more guaranteed money. And Coleman is a smart man. He's a really smart man. So going back, playing college for a year, getting paid a bunch of money, and then going to the NBA and just going all in on that next year just makes sense. And Coleman Hawkins, and a lot of things he does, he's rational. And I think he's going to kind of follow those steps.
Yeah, I think the financial move probably will ultimately, in my opinion, point back to college, because even if he is a draft pick, he probably still looking at that two-way type of range. I don't know, based on the mocks right now, and he hasn't been in many of them. Right. We'll see how he plays at the combine. I'm sure the NBA is going to be interested in what the knee is looking like currently. And you're probably trying to get in that early second round, maybe at the cut line is kind of the middle of the second round to get guaranteed money. I don't think he's probably going to land on that. Now, would he want to just, if he feels like he's going to get picked and he's fine with the two-way, he's fine with spending some time in the G League, kind of as that potential floater between the two, then, and he's just done with college, I wouldn't blame him if he wants to take that step. But if he wants to make a really, really nice payday and guaranteed money through NIL and more than potentially a two-way, I think it is coming back to college and using his leverage in the portal. And yeah, I'd be really surprised if he comes back to Illinois. Like really, really surprised.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to add to it, Derek? We're almost an hour here. But it's been a busy off season, and it was big news today to get Ivišić.
It was big news. I appreciate Ivišić for not ruining my weekend. I got to go check out Illinois baseball. They continue to be just a powerhouse at home, 18-2.
Yeah. By the way, I'm gonna have a baseball focused podcast. Scott Beatty gonna join me. He's watched every game basically, right? Except when he was covering, I think, Illinois in the basketball tournament. So we will have a breakdown of Illinois baseball. But they hit dingers, man.
Yeah, they hit two yesterday. 12-2 run rule against Ohio State. Two big series coming up to finish it off in the regular season. Iowa was a preseason top 25 team. I don't think they're currently ranked right now, but they're coming to town for the home finale, and then you get Purdue at the battle of teams at the top of the Big Ten on the road in West Lafayette the weekend after that. So I took my son, Cade, just turned 2, and then little one, Nelly. We all went out as a family. That was Cade's first baseball game, and he was very into it. So that made me a proud papa and made me think of his interests maybe there being forward. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that a lot.
And Derek, I have to do it. It's better than watching your Cardinals right now.
Oh, God. Congrats on the 2-3.
Thanks for the series win.
You put the better in our hearts. I said on the radio, if you guys beat Sonny Gray, our season was over. You didn't beat him, but you beat the next two guys we rolled out there. We're terrible. We stink.
Tough stuff.
Yeah.
And now Cardinals fans are realizing what it's like to be apathetic about your baseball team for an entire year. Welcome.
I'm even though I was team Justin Fields, now this is just making me dive even more into the Caleb Williams and the Bears, what we got cooking. So I'm excited.
Chef Bowles is cooking. That is for sure. Appreciate the more than 500 people on our live YouTube channel. Hit that like button, subscribe to us, hit the notifications bell. We really appreciate you guys. If there's more news coming up, we'll certainly get to it. I will be recording with Michael Tulip. He has been so excited about this potential addition, Derek. So he will join us soon. on the podcast. We'll talk with Scott Beatty about Illini baseball as well. But Derek will have more at Illini Inquirer. You can read about Tomislav Ivišić on IlliniInquirer.com. You can check it out there. And we'll have much more coming up. For Derek, I'm Jeremy. Everybody have a great day. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.